Machiko, will you do a roll call for us?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Jensen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Twice. There's echo.
Okay, how about now?
Quiet echo, but better.
I don't know. Okay. Over here, it's been.
It looks like you have two connections, Member Pines.
Do I have?
Yes, in the morning, Denise Pines was also logged in twice. I was not sure if that was two different devices, but it seemed to work. And the first setup that you used there was okay.
Okay, what about now?
That's seems fine.
Seems fine. Okay.
Oh, except I can hear myself in the echo.
Is there feedback now?
There was never feedback. What
Or
it was
the echo, I'm sorry.
right. It was the same issue that the attorney had. It seems like it's gone now. Thank you.
Okay.
You know, that might have been me in the hearing room here. This is Mike from Public Affairs. The mic on the public desk was probably creating that. I'm going to mute that until the speaker comes up.
All right, thank you. And it does look like all of the board members have logged back in if we have all of the board members in person in Sacramento. But as I recall, you were doing a roll call. Sorry, Machiko.
Yes. No, it's okay. Dr. Jensen.
Present.
Andrew Marino.
Present.
Corey Damian.
Present.
Claudia Mercado.
Present.
Dr. Patel.
I'm here.
Ms. Pines. Here. Have a quorum.
Excellent. Then let's move on to agenda item number 6, budget update from Bill Lloyd, DCA budget analyst. I'd like to hand it over to you. If we could make sure he's.
And I have just promoted him. Bill, would you like to do a
Thank
mic
you.
check?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfectly, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And good morning, and thank you to the board and the executive staff for inviting me to present the budget for this meeting. My name is Bill Lloyd, and I'm a budget analyst with the DCA Budget Office. I'm going to discuss the fund condition statement, revenues, and expenditures, and answer your questions. So please refer to the agenda item 6 document. These documents are what I will be presenting today. They provide a lot of information on the board's budget and both revenue and expenditures, and the projected fund balance into the future. I would like to highlight some of these areas and provide a little bit more clarity on them. On January 10th, the governor's budget was released, which provided updated budget numbers for the board that includes incremental adjustments to the board's current year, 2021 through 2022, and the budget year, 2022 through 2023, base budget, which was provided at the last board meeting. Page 2 of the document is the board's fund condition statement. We read this document top to bottom and then left to right. The left column is PY, or past year. The board began 2020 through 21 with an adjusted beginning balance of 4.9 million, collected approximately 3 million in revenue, and expended approximately 2.6 million in direct expenditures and additional statewide expenditures for a total of 2.8 million. The board ended 2020 through 21 with just over 4.9 million in reserve balance, or about 17.1 months in reserve. The balance moves to the top of the next column of the fund condition and becomes the beginning balance for the next fiscal year. The months in reserve is the amount of time the board can continue normal operations without any incoming revenues. For 2021 through 2022, or current year, which is labeled CY, based on the latest fiscal month 8 data, the board projects an estimated 2.8 million in revenue. This number is estimated to remain stable over the next few fiscal years. The board's expenditures for the fiscal year as of fiscal month 8 are projected to be approximately 3.2 million. As with revenue, expenditure projections may continue or change with actual returns in the remaining fiscal months. The Budget Office will continue to monitor these expenditures and revenues and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projections as future fiscal months close. You will find these figures in more detail on pages 1 and 3, which show specific category totals for expenditures and revenues. You will see for 2022 through 23, or budget year, or BY, and 2023 through 24, BY plus 1, the new governor's budget projections for revenue and expenditures. A few things to note about the board's fund condition. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in future years is a result of personal service adjustments. These include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes an ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments in out years. The fund condition does not include increased enforcement expenditures, which could create additional cost pressure to the board's fund in latter years. The Budget Office will continue to work with the board on any future resource needs. And lastly, we'd like to note that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would increase pressure on the fund. The Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's fund condition statement and keep a line of communication with the board's executive staff open for any future needs or expectations. Again, I want to thank you for the time today, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Hello, this is Claudia.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Yes, questions from the board?
Yes, I'm looking at page 2. It says BY plus 1, 2023-24 months in reserve under expenditures and expenditure adjustments.
Right.
It does look like our fund condition, our months in reserve drops to 7.8 months. Can you just point to me again where that huge discrepancy is coming from in terms of our going from 16.7 months in reserve to 7.8?
Yes, give me just 1 second. I apologize.
And I'm also not really clear as to what you mentioned in terms of the governor's budget affecting
Okay.
us.
Just real quick, in the governor's budget, every year the governor releases his budget on January 10th, and that's the new baseline for the budget coming up in the next fiscal year starting in July. So that's what we call the governor's budget. And then there's a few revises that are done throughout the year to where in July, when the legislator and the governor pass and sign the budget, it becomes the Budget Act, which is the law that enforces the budget. So as far as the fund condition, the drop in months, again, it's due to a little bit of reduction in the revenue from current year to previous year, and also increased expenditures. And then that's also based on how many months the current fund balance. So at this point, we're projecting $4.268 million left over after this year. That will fund the following year's expenditure projections. You'll see that towards the bottom part of the fund condition, there's a BY 2023 expenditures. That 3264, that 3,264,000, that's what the governor's budget is for expenditures for next year. And we always project that we're going to expend the full amount, which has not been the case with your board. Traditionally, you always had some kind of reversion back. Okay, so it's kind of a combination of a little bit less revenue, a little bit more expenditures, and then we're projecting what we're going to be able to spend for the next fiscal year at full expenditures.
Okay, thank you. So you also mentioned there's going to be an increase in enforcement cost, or there could be a potential increase. How will that happen? And also, what do you recommend we do so that we don't end up at 7.8 months in reserve?
Okay. Enforcement costs, unfortunately, they're unpredictable based on the amount of complaints or referrals that the board gets for action, and so the potential for a major lawsuit is always present, and those are unfortunately things that we can't predict on when they're going to occur. So that's why we always mention that increased enforcement could cause significant pressure on the board's fund. And as far as mitigating those, that's a conversation that you would have to have with the executive staff and the rest of the board members.
So what are your recommendations for us to not end up at 7.8 months in reserve? Should we be looking at increasing, you mentioned our fees or other ways to bring in revenue? Did I hear that correctly?
So the fees are generated by your licensees and the fee structure that you have in place right now. There's a statutory limit to the amount of fees that you can charge, and to increase those would require legislation. There is a administrative. I'm sorry, I'm lost for the word, but if you're not already charging the maximum that statute lets you charge, you could always increase it to that through board action. So again, that would be a discussion that we would have to have through the executive staff to decide where that would be appropriate to increase those fees.
All right, thank you so much. That's the end of my questions.
My pleasure.
This is Andrew. Just to kind of go off of Member Mercado's questions, can you tell me what is a general range where a board may want to stay in terms of their months in reserve, like a healthy range?
Yes, thank you. A healthy board generally is about 6 months in reserve. And so based on the figures here, even though they are declining in out years, and again, keep in mind, we project out years with revenue staying stagnant, but expenditures increasing at 3%. So traditionally, we always see the months in reserve go down in the out years. But generally, anything over 6 months is considered a healthy board.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? If not, we will now welcome comments from the public. Moderator, is there anyone requesting public comment?
It does look like Executive Officer Mark Ito has his hand raised.
Pardon me, thank you.
No problem.
Visualization is difficult. Okay.
Thank you. This is Mark Ito, the Executive Director. First, I want to thank Bill for an awesome presentation. I will say with the months in reserve, that's something that we do keep a close eye on. The board has a great relationship with the department and specifically the budget office, and we will continue to be in close contact with those months in reserve. As Bill said, we will look at what our statutory minimum and maximum is for our fees, and we will continue to monitor that and make adjustments if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ito. Moderator, are there any hands up for public comment?
Just one moment. So I've just opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx in case people on WebEx would like to make a public comment. And we will check each location, each physical location as well. So in Sacramento, do we have any members of the public present that would like to make a comment?
There are no members in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. In Toluca Lake, do we have any members of the public present that would like to make a comment?
No one present.
Thank you. In San Mateo, do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
Thank you. In Pomona, do we have any public comments?
No.
Thank you. And in Cerritos, do you have any public comments?
No.
Thank you very much. At this point, I do not see anyone in the Q&A feature of WebEx, and I do not see any hands raised. So it looks like we are done with public comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please, Ms. Fisher, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to agenda item number 7, Department of Consumer Affairs update. Carrie Holmes, the Deputy Director of the Board and Bureau Relations. Are you present to give us an update? I think I saw her name there.
She's just getting set up.
Ah, perfect. Okay.
I am here. All right. Good afternoon, board members and Vice President Jensen. Thank you for your leadership today. I am Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations here at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide a department update today. It is exciting to be here with you in person. On April 1st, boards and bureaus returned to meeting in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meeting Act, including publicly noticing all meeting locations. Legislation is in progress, which would permanently allow board and committees to meet remotely, while also providing both virtual and physical options for members of the public to participate. If AB 1733 is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, it would take place immediately. We cannot be certain that that will happen or when, but I know we all appreciate the flexibility and increased access that comes with both in-person and remote meeting options. Recently, Board and Bureau Relations distributed to all board and committee members guidelines and requirements for conducting in-person meetings. The communication addresses requirements for meetings under Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, guidance for face coverings, and vaccination verification and testing. DCA has also shared guidance and tips from the California Department of Health and the California Health and Human Services Agency to reduce the spread of COVID-19 for in-person meetings. Please be aware of changing public health guidance and remember that as state representatives, we are all expected to adhere to state and local orders while carrying out our duties. If you have not done so already, I encourage you to review these documents. Additionally, as you're preparing for upcoming meetings, please don't hesitate to reach out to Board and Bureau Relations with questions. Another communication which you may have received from Board and Bureau Relations is our new quarterly newsletter. I'm pleased to tell you that on April 5th, Board and Bureau Relations distributed our first issue of a quarterly newsletter titled Board Members, Did You Know? To all board and committee members. The newsletter is an outreach tool to keep you informed of department activities as well as information which may impact you as a board member. We hope you found this helpful and we welcome your feedback for future issues. If you did not receive the newsletter, please reach out so that we can verify your email address. I'd like to provide an update on DCA's Enlighten Licensing project. This work group was formed in 2020 to utilize subject matter experts in the entire department. The group's purpose is to help individual boards and bureaus streamline and make their licensing process more effective and efficient by utilizing best practices, information technology, and cost-saving measures. The first deep dive into the Board of Registered Nursing has completed. A report will be released this month with recommendations that can be used by all boards and bureaus to improve their processes. After this first round, the work group will soon begin directly assisting another board or bureau. As DCA looks to the future, Director Kirkmeyer continues to build the DCA team and lead the department towards continual improvement and excellent service. Tanya Corcoran began serving as the department's first Compliance and Equity Officer March 2nd. Ms. Corcoran will oversee DCA's Solid Training Unit, Organizational Improvement Office, Equal Employment Opportunity Office, and Internal Audit Office, allowing DCA to better identify and analyze emerging issues department-wide to provide timely solutions to DCA's divisions, boards, and bureaus. Terrence Brass has been selected to serve as Chief of the department's Division of Investigation. Brass brings valuable experience in all aspects of law enforcement and has also served in the Marine Corps. As DOI Chief, Brass will lead a team responsible for providing investigative services to DCA boards and bureaus with a mission to protect and serve California consumers. DCA is also pleased to announce that Dadong Prihati has been selected to serve as the Internal Audit Chief. As the Internal Audit Chief, Prihati will plan and direct the audit team, which provides independent, objective assurance and consulting services designed to add value and improve DCA's operations. Finally, whether meeting remote or in person, DCA wants to keep your board fully seated with excellent members and diverse voices. Currently, the board does have 2 vacancies, both licensees to be appointed by the governor. DCA's communications team put out a new toolkit to assist boards with member recruitment, available in multiple languages. Please ask for this if you haven't received it. And board members should also encourage individuals to visit DCA's Board Member Resources webpage to apply for appointments. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help, and if there's anything I can assist you with, please let me know. This concludes my presentation. I'll hand it back to Board Vice President Jensen.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Any discussion by the board?
This is Claudia. Hi, Carrie. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I actually pulled up the newsletter. I think it's excellent that you guys are doing that. It does say how to reset your LMS password. Is that for us to log into a portal as board members?
Yes, so the LMS is the learning management system.
Okay.
So that's where you'll log in to do your sexual harassment prevention training, board member orientation training, and eventually all trainings that are offered within DCA will be hosted on that system.
That's great. And I did request for us to update our logo there. I think it was done. So you guys were very reactive.
Oh, great.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
As a follow-up question, for our board particularly, given the demographics that we uncovered, I think by Mark in the last meeting of the demographic breakdown of our physicians, is the DCA doing any active outreach to tell the public the demographics of our board to encourage potentially new physicians to join the practice? For example, I think we're only around 6 or 5% of our physicians are Hispanic, and we have a whole list. I can't exactly quote it, but you mentioned you wanted to add value and you wanted to protect the public, and you talked about diversity. So how are we actively encouraging people to join a profession like the Osteopathic Medical Board?
Thanks for that question. And that's definitely something that's in conversations at DCA. That the addition of Ms. Corcoran to the executive team is definitely reflecting that value. And I know that it can be, kind of a tricky role for boards, keeping your focus on consumer protection rather than promoting the profession. But DCA definitely wants to partner in more outreach. We recently did strategic planning, and that definitely included a lot of communications goals to reach broader communities in multiple languages and to underrepresented communities. So it's definitely something that we're focusing on.
Great. Are you guys going to do like per board or like audit in terms of where we stand with those agendas? Like, would you guys take the time to look at what we're currently doing for outreach, how we're communicating to the public? I know me and Mark have spent some time talking about upgrading like the website and just like our social media. We're not really there. So can we do an audit as to what is best practices so that we can?
I'm not sure if it would be an audit. I know I know that
word, but
The communications team would definitely be willing to work with you on that. And the deputy for communications, Monica Vargas, has a huge focus on outreach to communities in different languages. She's really been changing a lot of our outreach materials to focus on that. So I'd be happy to connect you if you'd like more help with that.
I think so. I think all the help you can give us will be greatly appreciated. That's it for me. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mark Ito, Executive Director. I actually have a meeting with Monica Vargas tomorrow on outreach, and I'll bring that up.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Final comment. Anything that's exciting you about your role?
Anything that's exciting about my role? Well, since you asked, I will share personal news that I am leaving the department, but I am going home to stay with my 3 very young children. So there will be an exciting vacancy. And just to let you know, in terms of support, that the department is looking at bringing in temporary help, and we'll definitely make sure that the services to boards and bureaus doesn't have any gaps. But there'll be an exciting opportunity, and we have amazing folks up in the exec team to support. So I know that it'll still go great.
Thank you.
I guess we should say congratulations.
Thank you.
Although we will be losing you. Madam Moderator, can we open for public comment? See if there is any public comment on this topic.
Certainly. If anyone in the public would like to comment about any item in the DCA update, you can, if you're on WebEx, you can utilize the Q&A feature, which is symbolized by a question mark inside a box, typically at the lower right corner of your computer screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. And if you are attending the meeting in person at any of our locations, simply raise your hand, and I will check in at the locations to see if we have any requests for public comment. In Sacramento, do we have any requests for public comment?
There is no one from the public here.
Thank you. In Toluca Lake, is there any requests for public comment?
No one here.
Thank you. In San Mateo, any requests for public comment?
None. Thank you.
Thank you. In Pomona, any requests for public comment?
No.
Thank you. In Cerritos, any requests for public comment?
No.
Thank you. We do not have anyone in the Q&A feature asking to make a comment, and we do not have any raised hands. So shall I close the Q&A feature of WebEx?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, the Breeze presentation. Tom Jurak, Breeze Lead Business Integration Analyst. We are looking for you.
And what section, just really quickly?
Item number 8, Breeze presentation.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, there's no materials? Okay, got it.
Good afternoon. This is Tom Jurich. I'm a lead business integration analyst for the Breeze team, and I'd like to thank the executive staff and the board for inviting me to give an overview of our Breeze online licensing system. So Breeze was designed for DCA and modified by DCA to be what we would call an entity-centric licensing system, which means that everything within Breeze is associated with the individual. Licenses within different boards that are part of Breeze, enforcement statistics, anything that has to do with an application or a license with you as an individual is assigned to you as the basis of the Breeze functionality, if you will. Breeze works, it takes care of applications, license issuance, license maintenance, and also some data reporting. I heard some interesting conversations today about pulling data and being able to use data for just looking at statistics and this, that, and the other thing. Breeze allows for applicants to enter required information or apply for a new license either online or by submitting a paper application to the board. And this allows a hybrid model to allow people to apply and service their license from any place with an internet connection, as well as being able to work with the older style paper application submitted to the board. As part of the application process, Breeze also allows for application maintenance to provide for missing information, logging deficiencies and identifying missing information to support minimum qualifications for licensure. Breeze allows us to populate deficiencies as part of the application moving forward, and those deficiencies are available to be populated into a letter, and they're also available immediately online as part of our Versa online license management system. And that allows the applicant to see immediately what they might be missing so they can take action to keep their application moving forward. The online application also allows people to submit attachments as needed. It allows people to pay online, and the online payments go through immediately, which is one of the holdups with the manual paper system, which could prevent somebody's license from renewing in a timely fashion. Breeze also interfaces with third-party partners to transfer information, such as exam eligibility, recording scores of those exams, depending on the board's regulations and what their working model is. The third-party partners and Breeze will communicate with each other to reissue eligibility after a failed attempt if there's a certain amount of time that must pass between attempt A and attempt B. Breeze also interfaces with the Department of Justice to transfer criminal background information. It interfaces with the California Child Support Services to work with people that might have fallen behind on some of their payments for child support. It interfaces with Cures, and it interfaces with other third-party systems as needed and as configured by each board. So once a license is issued, Breeze also handles the renewals. And the renewals are really fancy to have online because this allows people, again, to pay right away, and people like to wait until the last moment, more often than not, to renew their licenses because life just gets in the way. So Breeze will allow people to make an online payment, and if all of the requirements are met for renewal, their renewal can be approved and taken care of within seconds of the payment and all the minimum qualifications being received. So minimum qualifications might be, CE requirements. There might be some required questions about enforcement. Have you been arrested? They want to be able to provide the ability to submit information and payments based on licensee input, which would mean, are you going to renew active or inactive? And Breeze itself will calculate the fees for the pathway for the licensee to maintain their licenses. Payments can be made online as part of the renewal process. And once the payments are made and approved, the DCA's license lookup reflects the new license status almost immediately. And I say almost immediately because there is a little bit of delay, like about 15 minutes between what Breeze does and what the DCA license lookup will display. Breeze also allows for people's license maintenance, and this streamlines people's ability to keep their license current. It will allow them to initiate a name change process, and Breeze is configured to support the DCA-wide name change processes by providing two types of information for the name change, and then that application has to be approved and vetted by each board that a licensee has associated with themselves because of Breeze's entity-centric nature, where all of the licenses that a person holds are associated with that person. Breeze will also allow to take payment online and generate verification letters if somebody wants to apply or have their license status sent to an entity out of state or maybe something in state. It will allow people to change their address in real time online without having to make a phone call or send a letter or do whatever they might need to do manually. They can do it immediately by themselves at their convenience. That also has the ability to change your license status. So if somebody decides that they want to maintain an inactive license for a while and then they decide that they'd like to change the license status to active, Breeze has the ability to ask a bunch of questions and record a whole bunch of information to make sure that the minimum qualifications to move that license from inactive to active status are taken care of. Breeze also has the provision to change somebody's license status to a military active or inactive status, which affords different rights for those people when they are deployed out of the state of California. Part of the license maintenance would be to replace replace your licenses, whether it be a wall license or a pocket license. If something happens, if your wallet is stolen or your purse is lost, or heaven forbid something happens with your wall license, you can contact the board electronically through Breeze, and you can go ahead and facilitate that at your convenience. It also allows the family support compliance with the California Child Support Services. That was something I talked about a moment ago with your with the interfaces that connect Breeze with our third-party partners. So if you are behind on a payment, you can work with the board and the Department of California California Child Services to get your license back up to snuff and maybe remove a temporary hold on your license. One of the things that we were talking about today that I've heard a bit is talking about data reporting and talking about status quo and how things work within the board, talking about efficiencies, talking about population, what percentage of your licensees might be of a certain ethnicity. Data can be extracted from Breeze very, very easily. That is assuming that that data is captured within Breeze. And that can be used for mailings or outreach. It can be used for providing licensing statistics. It can also be used for providing enforcement statistics. And those statistics can be whatever you would like them to be. How many licenses were issued in a year? How many licenses have been issued per zip code? What schools did people go to? What countries did people come from? Enforcement statistics can talk about a case being open, a case being closed. How long did that take? What are the violations? Whatever the information the board might want to know about the enforcement profile of their population, of their license base, all of this information can be extracted from Breeze, and it can be used for appropriate purposes within the board. So moving from the enforcement statistics, I'd like to talk a little bit about the enforcement module within Breeze, which works closely in concert with the licensing module within Breeze, because again, Breeze is what we call an entity-centric system where everything is associated in the system with an individual. So if you have a case that's going forward, an enforcement case that's going forward, by the nature of the way Breeze is configured, your license record is also associated with that case as the respondent. Your complaint can be submitted to Breeze online, and you can submit a complaint at any time from anywhere. You can submit a complaint anonymously, or you can submit your information to have the ability to track that case as it goes forward, as deemed appropriate by the board as an investigation might be going on. And information to be collected online in a complaint can be customized by board as needed. Breeze is customizable, and each board and bureau has their own way of performing their functions. So one of the neat things about Breeze is it is modifiable to support the needs of each board and bureau, so that we can collect information on the onset of the complaint being submitted to prevent our enforcement analysts from having to go out and collect more information as the case is going on. The processing of the complaints is configurable again by each board or bureau to accommodate the business needs that they need based on your laws and your regulations and what we as the Department of Consumer Affairs need to support as far as regulations are concerned. Breeze allows for cite and fine. It allows for restitution. It also allows for payment plan configuration, maintenance, and follow-up, so that if somebody can't afford to pay a humongous restitution fee, Breeze can set up a payment plan for them and manage that plan. And if somebody falls behind that plan, a notification can be sent to the manager of that enforcement case, so that that manager can then look into the reason that these payments might have fallen behind. It allows for biological fluid testing, scheduling and results, and collecting all of that information in real time as a result of our third-party reporting back and forth. I heard earlier this morning in our presentation, in one of our hearings, we were talking about Maximus, and I believe Maximus is one of the companies that Breeze interacts with to bring back all of the information based on your biologic fluid testing. Breeze also allows to facilitate online board voting for cases, so we do not have to rely on mail moving back and forth and documents maybe getting lost or not being delivered. And it also expedites the ability for the board members to vote on different issues as they arise. Breeze itself will also override a license status based on enforcement activity and ALJ decisions. So there are automatic well, I'd say automatic, but there are steps that are configured within Breeze that will allow enforcement activity to change somebody's license status to maybe be suspended or maybe be on probation. And that license cannot be changed until the enforcement activity will allow that license status to go back to a current status and allow that licensee to practice again. The last thing I'd like to talk about with Breeze is the DCA license lookup. And this is a public-facing, results-oriented lookup engine that anybody can enter information from any DCA board. Breeze is part of DCA, but the DCA license lookup also reaches out to different databases that DCA has to license anybody within the DCA umbrella. It provides real-time information within about 15 minutes, incorporating the person's name, their license number, if there might be a relationship between a doctor and a midwife, or a dental hygienist and a dentist, or different types of relationships that might be required for licensure, where a license status for a subordinate license might have to be current in order for the license that's related to be current. And all of these metrics are evaluated and enforced by the configuration within Breeze. Part of the license lookup also will talk about your license issuance date. It will talk about your expiration date, and it can also talk about, it can display, if the board chooses, your address of record. One of the abilities that Breeze also has is to project survey information from our HCAI survey, which is formerly known as OSHPED, which talks about demographic information, locale, years of service, areas of specialty, and other aspects of licensure that might be important to the public as a result of a license lookup. So that is a high level explanation of what Breeze does, talking about applications, licensure, renewals, maintenance, public-facing license lookup information, and how Breeze can be configured to support each board and bureau as needed. And I'd like to open this up to any questions that somebody might have regarding the Breeze functionality.
Thank you, Mr. Jurak. Any questions from the board? Any discussion by the board?
I had one comment. Thanks, Mr. Jurich, for that. I'm also a licensee too, and I've used Breeze to update my license, and it was very easy. And I was able to upload my CME, and it was great. But I did have some feedback from another licensee. I guess they were missing something, and they had to, submit it, and they weren't sure if their license had been in the end update or approved or renewed. In the end it was renewed, but it wasn't very obvious on the website that it was, because they had to press, I think, like hide details. It was like a small button, and it was hard to figure out what the status of the renewal was. I guess you could look it up in the lookup, and then you could see, okay, it's renewed until 2024. But just maybe some feedback, like if there was a status bar that was a little bit bigger, where you can just check on the status of the application. Is it in process or is it approved? That would be helpful, and save a lot of licensees from some unnecessary anxiety.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. And Madam Moderator, do we have the Q&A section open for any public comments?
Yes, I have just opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx. And if you are in person in any of the locations, you can raise your hand. And in Sacramento, you can approach the microphone at the front of the room. But for WebEx, you could locate the Q&A icon and type the word comment into the text box and click send. If you are on a mobile device, the Q&A is behind the 3-dot other options. And to make sure that we don't have any latecomers to the meeting at any of our physical locations, I will step through those next. In Sacramento, do we have any members of the public wanting to make a comment?
We have no members of the public present, but I believe that Board Member Mercado has a question.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Tom, correct? Your name. Great. I wanted to just ask you a few questions. I believe Breeze is an out-of-the-box software, meaning that it is customized to some extent to each entity that it's servicing? You did mention it was an entity-centric system. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is
So,
commercial off the shelf, and we do work with our vendor to make modifications that we are not able to make at DCA. We do have provisions to modify the code of the core system as well as do our configuration based on the contract of the product that we purchased.
So right now we're currently operating the licensing module and the enforcement module. So I guess I just wanted to check in with you in terms of all of our data and our workflow. Does Breeze have some kind of software escrow in place where if your entity was to no longer be given the next contract, what's the guarantee for the board that we can transition easily and have access to all of our information for all of the individuals and for everything that we do here at the OMBC?
That would be a question that we would have to defer up to leadership to talk about the contract and the data availability. However, when a data system is replaced, the legacy systems are often available for information to go back in time and look at information that happened before a new system will replace it. It's my understanding that we own all of our information that is part of the Oracle database, which is the basis of Breeze, and that information is DCA's. So what we do with it as we move forward is what we choose to do with it as an organization. The data that we own is ours.
And compared to other boards, how much are we spending for the modules and for the service we're receiving from your team compared to other boards in the DC?
That would be a question again for leadership. I'm not involved with the fiscal aspects of Breeze itself.
Can you just explain to me your role so we know kind of what your role is for Breeze, please?
Sure. I'm a business analyst. I work as a liaison between the boards and bureaus and the technical staff. And I report to management on an as-needed basis to make sure that our functionality is moving forward smoothly.
Do you have any recommendations for the board in terms of things that we can improve on or take advantage of based on your time working with us?
We're always in a state of flux and modifying Breeze to accommodate new regulations and changes in laws as they go forward. And as long as we stay on top of that ball and use the DCA's technical ecosystem, which is all of our tools within DCA, that is outside of Breeze and including Breeze, to facilitate the needs of licensure and application and enforcement. So I can't say that there's one specific thing, but we do have a large team on staff that can take care of these changes as they come up. And in most cases, we can take care of things rather quickly.
Okay, last question. How do you think our executive team here and our staff will rate you from 1 to 5 as providing service to the board?
Would rate me as a 1 to 5?
Yeah, Breeze itself.
Oh, Breeze itself. I was like, if it was me, I'm a 5. I'm a 5. Breeze itself, we have had a difficult rollout and we had some difficult press. So if 5 was at the top and 1 was at the bottom, I would put us just a little bit before 4 or right around 4. We always have room to improve, but there's a lot of stuff that Breeze does very, very well. And a lot of the things that Breeze does very, very well are the things that we don't see. It's kind of like turning on your faucet. When you turn on your faucet, the water works, but you don't think about the infrastructure behind the faucet. You just realize that the faucet works. And when you turn on the faucet and you get cold water instead of hot water, you realize, well, something's not quite right. So that's why I would say that Breeze does a very good job. There are always rooms for improvement within any data system.
I agree. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the comments. Madam Moderator, do we have any comments on Q&A, or if
We
not,
do
then
not.
let's close it. Okay,
All right,
perfect.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Then moving on to agenda number 9, National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners update. Do we have, yes, Dr. Gimple present?
And John Gimple, I have promoted you to panelist, so you should be able to unmute yourself. I will send you a request just to help you locate that feature. Oh, goodness, all right. Okay. So we've momentarily lost Mr. Gimple, but we do have Mr. Murray
Yes, I
Did
saw
you
his
wanna?
name on there before. Yeah, why don't we, Mr. Murray, would you be
Try
willing to
unmuting.
give some information? Or should we wait for Dr. Gimple?
And Mr. Murray, I sent you a request to unmute your microphone in case that helps locate the functionality.
If we continue to have some issues, we can move to the executive director's report and come back to this as well.
Yep. Hello, thank you, board. Sorry for the delay. We had a power outage in our building, so we had to move some things around.
Not at all.
This
Thank you
is
for being
Doug
here.
Murray, and I have Dr. John Gimple, our president and CEO as well.
Hello, everybody. John Gimple.
Hello, thank you for this. Please go right ahead.
Okay, I just want to say before I start, I believe we also have on the call Dr. Geraldine O'Shea, who is immediate past president of the NBOME Board of Directors and also a past member of your board, OMBC. So she wanted to join us as well. But I guess, am I sharing the slides or are you sharing the slides for us?
And this is the moderator. We do have the presentation that we will be sharing on the screen.
Okay.
And would you prefer that Dr. O'Shea be panelist so she can unmute herself at will?
Yes, please, if you could do that as well. Yeah.
Certainly.
That sounds good. Welcome, Dr. O'Shea.
So, okay, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, we always like to start with our mission statement, which you can see is protecting the public by providing the means to assess competencies for osteopathic medicine and related healthcare professions. And that's our North Star. It's in everything that we do. And we just always like to bring that up as our guiding focus of our organization. Next slide, please. We wanted to highlight some changes to the exam, which have been publicly announced previously, but are actually taking effect in the next few months. So the Complex Level 1, Complex USA Level 1 will be changing from a numeric score to a pass-fail score. And that change will be taking place in May, this May upcoming. And should not be an impact on the licensing board. That the score reports, other than the fact that they will not have a score, will be the same, and you'll be able to see a candidate passed and failed, and the electronic transfer of this information as well will be the same. The second change that's taking effect is that the Complex USA attempt limits for all of our exams will be reduced from 6 to 4 effective July 1st, 2022. And that, again, has been announced well in advance. But we have also reached out recently to some candidates who we determined may be directly impacted by the fact that they may have already have several failures on their record. And so you may be receiving some requests from individuals who might want some sort of exemptions or an additional attempt, which we do allow candidates who have exhausted their attempt limits to get one more attempt if a state board approves that and asks for that candidate. So you may be seeing some attempts or some questions about this going forward. If you don't have any questions on that, I will turn it over to Dr. Gimple to talk about our special commission and some of the activities that it has been working on recently.
Hi, and thank you, Doug. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wish I was there in Sacramento with you. It's the weather changed here, I guess, with this power outage. We had some thunderstorms that rolled through in our Philadelphia offices. But as Doug said, we do have Dr. Jerry O'Shea there with us as well, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to give you this brief update. The next slide, please, talks a little bit about the clinical skills situation and the special commission. About 2 years ago, of course, when COVID hit, we suspended the level 2 PE exam early March of 2020 because of course, safety concerns, travel concerns, and safety in delivering a very hands-on exam that at that point was delivered in both Chicago and Philadelphia. We worked actually through the year to actually add a third center in California as a way to be able to provide even more access to this exam once we were able to get it safely back open. But as we all know, COVID had different ideas. And ultimately, we indefinitely suspended the level 2 PE exam and announced we were bringing together a special commission. Next slide, please. That commission was on osteopathic medical licensure assessment, and you can see that the representation chosen for that committee was meant to be truly representative of the practice of osteopathic medicine in America. Relevant to you, of course, licensing boards were front and center, and I believe there are 3 representatives who are directly serving or have served either on state licensing boards or had been leaders of those organizations. In fact, the president of the American Association of Osteopathic Examiners, Dr. Alexios Karyanopoulos from Rhode Island, is in fact on the commission himself. We also, very relevant to you all, have a patient and public member representation, both by a member on the commission, but also public testimony by patients and patient safety advocates themselves, along with the other groups that you see mentioned: learners, students and residents, educators at schools, deans, educators at teaching hospitals, GME programs, and all of the organizations that you see represented, including the American Osteopathic Association itself. Next slide. This group has been working for about 15 months now on basically looking at the challenge and the dilemma. How can we assess clinical skills? Are clinical skills still important to be assessed? What would be alternative ways to do that? And one of the ways we went about that study was asking each of the colleges of osteopathic medicine, which, as you know, now number 3 in your great Golden State there, but also number about 57 different campuses around the United States. And ultimately, with asking the schools how they currently teach clinical skills, how they currently assess them, how they set standards, the commission came to a conclusion that the profession seems to agree that the assessment of these fundamental osteopathic clinical skills is important. It's important in protecting the public. Your mission, our mission, depends on that. But it's important that this is done. Number 2, that a lot of it is being done at the colleges of osteopathic medicine, far different from 20 years ago when the exam came into play, but that potentially the COMs or COM locations, COMs meaning colleges of osteopathic medicine, could be sites where this could be administered, something like it in the future. And the third, it's important that that assessment still maintain a national standard. An independent audit function by kind of a national authority with experience and, of course, evidence for validity and reliability of the assessment. Again, ultimately to protect the public and also, we believe, protects the profession. Next slide. With those takeaways, the commission has continued to study some alternatives and some ways to move forward beyond the pandemic. And essentially for the current graduating classes, as you're probably aware, the commission and the board of directors of NBOME approved some temporary attestation pathways, namely that the school could be entrusted to assess each individual graduate and make sure that they had demonstrated the fundamental osteopathic clinical skills, things like doctor-patient communication, empathetic communication, cultural competency in communication, things like physical examination, hands-on skills, and OMT and OMM, of course, delivered safely to patients, and documenting things up with a post-encounter note with a differential diagnosis and management diagnostic and treatment plan. Just yesterday, as luck would have it, the Special Commission issued its recommendations, which are, in a sense, preliminary in that the call is for public comment. So we would love to have commentary from the Osteopathic Medical Board of California, any of the licensing boards. We're presenting at the national meetings over the next month of licensing boards and of educators and of student organizations to solicit further input. While we did put out a call for public commentary early in the work, and many state licensing boards, I know Mr. Ito was involved with some discussions with our Doug Murray on occasion relative to this, and we've appreciated all the input that boards and other authorities and individuals have given us. But the four themes are the future of this clinical skills assessment, emerging content and competencies, which are important to make sure that COMLEX USA remains up to date with the evolving practice of osteopathic medicine, opportunities to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in fact, if there's systemic bias being introduced into the environment due to assessment, the way content is presented, for example, or other aspects, that we ameliorate or eliminate those situations. So that's an important organizational priority and an important priority for us to look at in assessment. And then finally, the Commission was also studying various advances in technology, in test delivery, and in assessment, and looking for opportunities there. So if you go to the next slide, the one recommendation out of 10 that I'll focus on, and you probably received the recommendations, or your board received the recommendations yesterday because they were just launched yesterday, is recommendation number 1. And that's the one that I spoke most about, which is long-term solutions to assess clinical skills competencies for osteopathic medicine in the COMLEX program, essentially for that class of 2024 and beyond. The classes of 2022 and 2023 know that they have the attestation pathway where their dean can attest that they have been assessed and they've met that criterion. But beyond that, what will, in a sense, help to assure you at licensing boards and others that the graduates of the future have demonstrated their skills to a national standard. And the recommendation is, as you can read, establish a or a school-based COMLEX USA National Standardized Assessment, which includes an in-person, hands-on evaluation of fundamental osteopathic clinical skills, including interpersonal and communication skills and OMT with quality assurance. And there's further information in the monograph that detailed the 10 recommendations. We'd love for you to take a look at them. We'd love for you to have your feedback. We are requesting written feedback from boards or individuals by May 4th. So it's a 3-week turnover. But next slide talks about those next steps. That public commentary period is about the 3rd official public commentary period that the Commission has had during its course. So we've appreciated all the input that we've gotten from the whole profession, recognizing that this was not an NBOME problem to solve in a silo. This was a profession-wide problem that needed to be addressed. After the Commission takes all that feedback in, they will take final recommendations to the NBOME Board of Directors at their mid-year meeting in June, and a final report will be released in July of 2022, and we will make sure Mr. Ito and Madam Chair and all of the rest of you all receive that information. And the last slide, actually 2 last slides, just focuses on osteopathic distinctiveness. I don't need to probably belabor this, given that you are California and you did have 1962, and you know sometimes there are movements afoot to look at merging and amalgamation and other kinds of things, and even questions that we get when are osteopathic physicians really distinctive, are they not? And we've continued to stay out in front of those types of issues as they arise, making sure that individual stakeholders understand that the reason why osteopathic physicians take COMLEX USA and distinctive osteopathic assessments is, in fact, our profession has distinctive competencies. And the weighting of those competencies, and even the weighting of the way patients present in our examination pathway, aligns with our curricular program, the DO curricular program at DO schools. More importantly, it aligns with the practice of osteopathic medicine, because we study and build an evidence-based, validity trail for why these assessments are the appropriate assessments for you to require in order for a DO to get a license in your great state or in any other state. Next slide. And I think this is the last slide. And it does have a few interesting bits of information that you might want to check out, especially for the DOs and the public members. These are on our website. One of them was recently released in the DO magazine. We used to call it that. It's now, of course, an online blog that the AOA puts out on a new modern definition of that distinctive practice of osteopathic medicine. Check it out. We'd love to have your feedback on that. There's also some information in there from your own native son, Brian Lovelace from Pomona, who was calling for a unified definition, which actually the first reference there does provide one potential solution. There's some information in there about myths and misconceptions as to why, COMLEX is an important credential for DOs and why the public needs to know that their DOs have demonstrated their competencies for osteopathic medical practice. And then, as you can follow along, the importance of osteopathically distinctive assessment. We are celebrating, along with the entire osteopathic profession, next week, as luck would have it, the National Osteopathic Medicine Week, NOM Week, they call it. It's also International Osteopathic Healthcare Week. It's a great celebration for the growth of our profession and the fact that more patients in more communities in California, as well as all around the United States and the globe, now are choosing to seek care from osteopathic physicians and have more of a chance of actually being able to seek care from osteopathic physicians due to the growth in our wonderful profession. With that, I'll ask you to just slide over to that next and last slide, and I'll ask if Dr. Jerry O'Shea wanted to make any comments to summarize for the NBOME.
Thank you, Dr. Gimple, and I hope that you all can hear me also. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Thank you to Mr. Sanchez and to all of the board. John just did a great summarization of a lot of work, heavy lifting that the NBME has done to continue having our licensure series continue to check our clinical skills, as it is such an integral part of our osteopathic distinctiveness. I want to say, yes, I am a recovering chair of the NBME, but proud to say that I was also president of the Osteopathic Medical Board for 8 years. And I'm going to date myself saying that it was Governor Schwarzenegger that put me on there. So you guys, I do appreciate all that you do. This is a long day for you. I know that we're winding up here, but we're proud of the work that we've just done. If you do have any questions, if you do have any comments, if you want to put them through your board, or also when I meet, and looking forward to meeting Denise Pines coming up in New Orleans at the Federation of State Medical Boards meeting, I will make sure that I outreach to her and ask her any questions that she might have about the series. We look forward to continuing communications, and again, heartfelt thank you for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Shea, Dr. Gimple, and Mr. Murray. First, to open up to board members. Any discussion from the board on this topic?
I had a quick question. Himesh Patel here. Thank you, first of all, for this incredible work. And as the other DOs know, we've all been through the clinical skills exam, and we know how important it is to demonstrate that our skills have been met prior to obtaining our license. I did want to ask if these schools are given the task of ensuring competency, how will that be regulated? Would there be a group of outside, practitioners or providers that would ensure that the assessment is, standardized, or not standardized, but on par with quality? Just wanted to ask that. Thanks.
Excellent question, Dr. Patel, and thank you. The standardization to ensure that everybody gets a fair, kick at the can too, right? It's important that fairness is ensured, but also that it's standardized and in a true independent audit, and not just alone the mentors, the coaches, the teachers, the professors of the individual students who get to know the students. And if they were the only ones making the determinations, that would, of course, bring some concern to folks appropriately, I think, at licensing boards. And that's why, in fact, the part of the recommendation talks about the standardization and the importance of a national standard. How that will actually go about will take some time to kind of work on the exact particulars. And it will likely include the use of some very tried and true, in other words, validated instruments, rubrics that are used, some training that would need to be done kind of with national oversight, some clinical case content that's standardized used at the different schools, and information where we already have lots of test data and lots of information norms, if you will, to work on that. But providing some level of that standardization and that oversight seems to be critical, as opposed to another model that, of course, was put forth by a number of its advocates, was, oh, just let the schools do it, however they want it, with however they want to do it. And in fact, some schools were doing it, but they were doing like maybe 2 stations, which of course wasn't able to get reliable data and that kind of thing. So the summary of the answer is we're not exactly sure. We've worked on a number of models. We have a number of things going through. We are negotiating, of course, with other stakeholder groups as to how we would go about that. But we do want to be able to provide you at the state licensing board the assurance that each candidate coming to you for a license has in fact demonstrated to a national standard in a fair, reliable and valid way, defensible way, that they in fact have at least the minimal fundamental clinical skills for the practice of osteopathic medicine.
Thank you so much for that response. Any additional questions from the board?
This is Claudia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna try to, I think we might have to turn off the microphone here.
Yeah, public.
Maybe.
Okay, this is me again. I think it was me. Sorry about that. Long day. Still have a lot of energy. Don't worry. Okay. Thank you for being here. I wanted to see if you could maybe tell the board. I think it was mentioned that the profession is growing nationwide. So I would like to maybe, if you guys can give us some information as to how fast or what growth means for the country. Also, if there's any data that can provide us a breakdown of women DOs versus men DOs. And I bring that up because I read an article, I don't know if you guys have seen it, on the New York Times, titled, "Women Are Calling Out Medical Gaslighting." So I'm wondering, how are you guys going to measure bias towards women and the potential positions that stereotype women or women conditions, maybe classify women as hysterical or not validating their concerns? And that also goes for people of color. So any thoughts on medical gaslighting and how you plan to evaluate that from happening?
Thank you for your questions. In sum, the National Osteopathic Medicine Week is going to feature a lot of updates next week on the exact numbers. I believe we're up to about 135,000 practicing osteopathic physicians. I think we represent about 10% of licensed physicians now in the United States, but DO students represent about 25% of entering, and in fact, even I think this year graduating U.S. Medical students. That is 25% of students studying for a DO degree or an MD degree combined. 25% of those students combined are actually studying at DO granting schools. So tremendous amount of growth. We're up to about 57 different campus locations. And to put that in some framework, I believe we were at about 20 in the year 2020. So we've really grown tremendously. And of course, in your great state there in California, in the year 2000, in your great state of California in the year 2000, there was only one DO granting school. And now, as you know, there are 3 with the new school up north near Fresno and Toro, California in the greater San Francisco area, complementing the Western University down there in Pomona. In terms of gender mix, the entering classes are about 50-50 now. In fact, I think we just had our first class or so that was greater than 50% women. The overall profession, since obviously it's growing in such leaps and bounds, that is starting to catch up and get into the 40 to 45% range of women to men. And so we're really excited that that we're achieving a better gender balance across the DO profession. 20 years ago, it had been historically, quite a bit much more male than female. And actually, you bring up a really good point that there are ways to assess certain content related to bias, and certainly in the case of gender, in the case of race, ethnicity, and that's a big part of our initiative at MBOME. But even in the clinical skills exam, what people often didn't realize is that part of the rubrics for the assessment of doctor-patient communication involved empathetic communication and the communication using, paying attention to cultural competency and being able to communicate with people, who are different than you, whether that be a different gender, whether that be a different, body type, whether that be a different race, ethnicity, that type of thing. So those are really important things to continue to test, to continue to set as the standards, so that doctors are not just expert in their knowledge and application of knowledge, but they're actually expert in the empathy and the humility and the ability to communicate with individuals to make them feel heard and to appropriately both communicate and interact with them in a way that they would desire. So these are really important initiatives for our organization, for our board, and for our assessments, I believe, moving forward. And so please follow along the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that are part of that special commission group of recommendations I briefly described earlier.
Thank you so much. I forgot to ask this question. Do we have any data on members that are part of the LGBTQ community?
I do not have that for the American Association, the AOA data, but I'll look into that and we'll see if we can get you some information there. Again, another group that historically has either been reported to be underrepresented or whatever with across the House of Medicine, and an important thing. So I'll see what I can find. I'm not familiar with any data that the AOA, American Osteopathic Association, or the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine have put out.
I think that'd be great. I think just giving the state of affairs nationwide and a lot of stuff happening in other states, and you mentioned you have 57 campuses across the country. So I want to make sure that whoever's entering this profession knows that they're being welcomed and that they can be themselves. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll send, along with those data that I think are going to be put out next week with the National Osteopathic Medicine Week, we'll make sure Mr. Ito has them so that you all can see that. We'll also send a couple other initiatives that I think you will be interested in that do relate to attention, which won't surprise you, has come so much from the learners themselves, who, whether they were the millennial generation, not to stereotype, or they were even the generation that follows, who are so attentive to this in ways way better than us I'll speak for myself, older folks kind of were, and so appreciative of it, and so appreciative of the importance that if you don't trust your doctor because they don't put off the signals and can't communicate with you in a way that makes you comfortable and what have you, you're never going to follow their advice and/or trust that advice will actually help you. And it's so important to the quality of care. So I'll send a couple of other resources related to that have come out of our student organizations, the Council of Osteopathic Student Government Presidents and the Student Osteopathic Medical Association, that are very, very laudable initiatives that are indeed bright stars for our future in taking better care of patients and populations.
Thank you so much for your answer. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for all of the comments and the responses. And I just want to check in with our moderator to see if there were any comments or hands raised by the public. If not, then let's close that.
Okay, I have just opened up the Q&A.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I do not see any raised hands, and we can quickly step through the physical locations. If you are a member of the public who'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. And in Sacramento, any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
There are no members of the public.
Thank you. Any public comments in Toluca Lake?
No members of the public.
Thank you. Any public comments in San Mateo?
No members.
Thank you. Any public comments in Pomona?
No.
Thank you. Any public comments in Cerritos?
No.
Thank you. And I see no requests through WebEx and no raised hands. So yes, we can close that Q&A feature.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Then I would like to move on to, I believe, agenda item number 10, the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Mark Ito.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. This is Mark Ito, Executive Director. I'm excited to present this report. In the essence of time, I'll try to make this as short and sweet as possible, and then I will pass it over to Corey Sparks to do the enforcement portion of my report. So the first section of the Executive Director's Report is licensing. Those first three tables that you see there, that shows our total population for the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. We continue to be a growing population. For our full unrestricted licenses, we have 13,175. So our population is still growing, albeit not at the pace that it was over the last few years, but we are still growing. We have 1,377 postgraduate training licenses, first 21 through March 31st of 2022. For this fiscal year, we've received 844 full unrestricted applications. We've approved 623, and we've issued 476 licenses. For the postgraduate training licenses for this fiscal year, we've received 375, and we've approved 522. We've renewed 3,581 licenses, and for our fictitious name permits, we have received 109, approved 88, and we've renewed 675. So our workload is increasing along with our population growing. The last part of licensing I want to discuss is the automated fingerprint process. We're excited about this process. We transitioned to it in early January. This process requires applicants to submit their fingerprints directly to the Department of Justice. Our BREEZE system receives these records nightly via an interface with the DOJ. BREEZE attempts to match the fingerprints to the correct person and the related application. If the system is unable to match it, it will continue to try to match it to the record for a year. There have been some hiccups, just like with any transition, but we have already seen a decrease in workload for licensing as a result of the new fingerprint process. We're excited about that. For staffing, we have 13.4 authorized positions. We currently have 2 vacancies. One is an office technician typing position, which will be the board receptionist, among other duties at the board, and the other position is our medical consultant position. I'm looking to fill the OT position in May, and the medical consultant position will be advertising soon. Our website updates. On January 27, 2022, the board reached out to DCA regarding our website redesign. We're in the process of going through all of our website pages to see what is necessary and what is not necessary. And once that is complete, I will be submitting the information to DCA, and we will officially start the redesign. For regulations, we have 2 regulations I'm working on. One is the CME audit. I spoke with the DCA budget office about the standard 399 form that needs to go along with the regulations. We're costing out what the economic and fiscal impact is for the regulation, and once those numbers are dialed in, I'll be submitting that regulation to the department for pre-review. We have the citable offenses regulation. This is to update the citation authority to enforce existing statutes and regulations. Adding these citable offenses to the board's citation and fine authority will significantly strengthen the board's overall enforcement and regulation of the profession. The board anticipates submitting this to DCA for pre-review by the end of the fiscal year. COVID-19 update. On March 19th, there was the executive order that provided a stay-at-home order for the citizens of California. The board has done a good job of following that order. I've set up a telework schedule for staff that ensures operational needs are met. Staff work intermittently in the office while maintaining the appropriate social distance guidelines. A couple other updates is on September 23rd, 2021, any state employee that was not verified as being fully vaccinated had to test weekly. That's something that DCA has been instrumental with. They've been great and been a huge asset for the board. On October 5th, 2022, that's when the governor signed the executive order that allowed, it extended the sunset of AB 361 at the time that allowed us to meet entirely remotely. That expired on March 31st, 2022. As Carrie Holmes said, spoke about earlier, there is a bill, AB 1733, which would allow the board to permanently meet remotely without noticing all board member locations. The board is excited about that bill, and we look forward to seeing where it goes. So with that said, that concludes my portion of the executive director report, and now I will pass it over to Corey Sparks to present the enforcement portion.
Hello, board members. I'll make this as quick as possible. Basically, you have copies of the report, and let's go to page 1 under data table 1. First of all, let me preface this by saying that the data, pulled from Breeze, I only had time up until March 25th, so we have a little bit of the data at the end of March that's missing. So most everything should be accurate. Probably the only data that really fell off was the intake for the last week of March. So, but other than that, all the other numbers should be pretty accurate. So, looking at table number 1, we have in this last 12 months, we had 632 complaints that were received, and we assigned 694. The aging for the intake process averaged around 18, and we'll talk about that a little later. And then we can see at the end of this time, we had 5 cases pending at the end of March, so, which is really good. It means we're really working on these intake cases very well. I've included an 805 data based on the board's request, and we can see the last 12 months, the number of 805 reports that the board received, and the total was 8. We don't get a lot. These 805 reports, for those who don't know, these are disciplinary actions or investigations that come from hospitals or clinics that take action against a physician. We get those reports and we look into them to determine if there is a violation of the Medical Practice Act. Looking in the middle of the page, figure 1.1, we can see that those levels have come down quite significantly in our intake, which really means the analysts are doing a great job in, when those cases are received, getting them into the system and getting them out to investigation. So this is a significant, what would you say, significant achievement, because for a long, long time, those levels are very high, and now we've hit where we're supposed to be. We're below the threshold, which is really, really good. And you can also see that in the pie chart, at the graph, the bar chart at the bottom. We can see those levels, especially starting in September through the end of March, really hitting where we want. So moving on to page 2, data table 2, we can see 693 cases were assigned. These are for all of our desk investigations. So we had 693 cases assigned, 685 were completed. The average number of days to complete an investigation internally was 139 days. And at the end of March, we had 301 cases pending. One quick note is that we are seeing an increase in the intake of complaints. I know I've been on the board for a while. I would say about a year and a half ago, we were around 500 cases that we were receiving within a 12-month period. Now we're up to over 600, almost 700. So we are increasing, our complaint numbers are increasing. And you can see in the figure 2.1, desk investigations monthly totals, our pending cases averaged around 300 to 350 per month. and the assigned and completed cases were around 60 per month. Moving on down to Table 3, these are cases that we send out to the Division of Investigation. We assigned 39 cases during this period. 42 cases were completed. The average number of days to complete a field investigation was 596 days. And at the end of March, 62 cases were pending in the field. Page number 3, we can see the breakout of the completed field investigation cases. We can see that those are the breakout of the type, the complexity of those cases. We had 8 excessive prescribing cases completed, 8 unprofessional conduct and fraud cases completed, 5 sexual misconduct cases, 4 criminal cases, 7 negligent cases, 3 substance abuse cases, and 6 unlicensed practice cases. In the middle of the page 3, we can look under Table 4. For all our investigations, that's desk investigations and field investigations, we can see the aging for particular time periods. So for 90 days, we completed 292 cases. For 91 to 100 days, we completed 137 cases. 6 months to 1 year, we completed 127 cases. 1 to 2 years, 68 cases, and 2 to 3 years, 27 cases. So 489 cases, or 66% of the cases, investigations were completed within 6 months, and 606 cases, or 86%, were completed within a year. Page number 4, we have all of our cases that were transferred to the Attorney General's office and the outcomes. During this period, 31 cases were initiated to the AG. 21 cases, we had accusations filed. No statement of issues. We haven't had a statement issue filed for some time. Final disciplinary orders, we had 11. We had 1 case that was withdrawn or declined. We had 6 cases that were closed without disciplinary action, 2 citations issued, and 3 cases were ISOs or PC-23s. I think those were all of those were PC-23s. So PC-23 is when there's a criminal action and we go to court to the judge and we say, hey, judge, we think this doctor is a danger, and the judge agrees, and they issue a PC-23, which really is a restriction on their practice. And we can, middle of page 4, we can look at all of the final disciplinary orders during this period, which were 11, and we can see the breakout of how long the aging is for that process. We had 2 cases that took 91 to 180 days. We had 1 case that took 181 to 1 year, 6 months to a year to complete. 2 cases took 2 to 3 years. 5 cases took 3 to 4 years, and 1 case was 4 years. Typically, most of our cases take 3 to 4 years once they get to the AG. Cases that are like probably 91 to 180 days, or or within a year. Typically, those cases are like out-of-state cases where we get, someone with another state discipline, and the subject, and it takes really relatively quick time to turn around that at the AG's office. Moving on to page 5, we can see the breakout of the final disciplinary orders. We had 3 cases that were put on probation, 2 cases were revocation, 4 cases were a surrender. We had 2 that were a reprimand. 1 case was a pre-PLR, which is meaning that we were able to get a reprimand from someone prior to sending it to the AG's office. And then probation, as of 3/25/2022, we had 36 probation cases, 2 of those, and 2 compliance monitoring cases. They weren't probation cases, but a compliance monitoring case is an individual who's been put on reprimanded. They have a reprimand, but there are terms and conditions of that reprimand that they have to do, either that's cost recovery or take a course, whatnot. So once they complete those terms and conditions, then those cases are just closed out. we had 10 cases that are told for all probation. For the last 12 months, 7 probation cases have been closed and 3 cases were opened. The total cost recovery order to date is $561,000. We've $301,000 have been paid, and leaving a balance of $260,000. So that's my report. Sorry I was going so quick, but got it done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sparks and Mr. Ito. Any comments from the board?
Somebody say good job.
Agreed. Hearing none, I will ask our moderator if we have any comments in our Q&A section.
Thank you. I've opened up the WebEx Q&A. If you are attending on WebEx and you have a question about anything in the Executive Director's report, you can look for the question mark icon, which is a square inside a circle, a question mark inside a square. And once you open that, you can put comment into the text field and click send. And I will step through the physical locations just in case we do have members of the public who've arrived late and do have comments. In Sacramento, do we have any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
There are no members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. In Toluca Lake, anyone want to make a comment?
No one here.
Thank you. San Mateo, any request for public comment?
No members of the public.
Thank you. Pomona, any request for public comment?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos, any request for public comment?
Nope, there are no requests.
Thank you. And I see no requests in the Q&A and no raised hands among attendees. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
You're welcome.
Now moving on to our second to last agenda item. Agenda item number 11, the discussion of possible action on pending legislation. Terry Thorfinson.
Hi, this is Mark Ito, the Executive Director. Terry is going to present this report, but I'm going to ask her to do 11B before 11A.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mark.
Last but not least, we're going to talk about some proposed language changes to our statute that I would like the board to review and to approve, and that's the elimination of our prorated licensure. As you may know, the way that we issue licenses is we issue them on the date that we issue them is not the date 2 years from that time. It actually, we have a prorated period to get people to their birth month. So that involves an initial period of time that can be anywhere from 13 to 24 months. And then after from their birth month to their 2 years, that would be the regular extended expiration time frame. With the onset in January of this year, 2022, SB 806 implemented a new change to our licensure that shifted, kind of added a level of complexity that shifted the requirement of checking to see whether licensees had completed 36 months of postgraduate training, but that check went from in the initial license application to the renewal. So that time period now kind of hurdles. They're eligible for licensure after 12 months of completion of postgraduate training. They can get a full license. The requirement for completion of 36 months is still required in the statute, but the check for that and the demonstration that licensees must have doesn't come until their first renewal. But because we have this prorated license system for us, some people will not complete that 36 months by the time of their first renewal, particularly if they're an early renewal, like they have to renew because of their birth month within 12 months. So our proposal to streamline this and comply with SB 806 is to eliminate our prorated licensure so that people would get licensed from the date that license is issued, and it lasts for 2 years. No more prorated amount period, no more prorated amount, and no more change in terms of the expiration date. And this will allow, in terms of streamlining, all licensees will be demonstrating at their first renewal, which will be a lot less complex than it will be. And we're hoping that if we can get this legislation this year, it could be implemented in time for January, when we believe the first people would be up for potentially having to determine, are they eligible to demonstrate compliance of the 36 months, or would we have to renew them and have them demonstrated at the second renewal. So the existing language, if you see, it is, if you flip the page under suggested changes, I just want to go quickly to what the statute says. The existing language is not marked up, so the new language is underlined. Anything we're eliminating is struck out. So we tried to make as few changes as possible to the existing language to accomplish eliminating the birth month reference, but retaining the midnight, they have to renew at the end of the 2-year term. And we're also deleting the reference in the second paragraph to shall establish regulations and to regarding the staggered license period, because we're eliminating that particular aspect of the statute, so we no longer would need that authority. So the proposal is to eliminate the prorated licensure, so everybody gets licensed and has a license for 2 years from the date that the license is issued, and this is the language that we're proposing. Any questions?
This in effect would also just streamline the board's overview process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because right now with the two straddle renewals, we have people that we have to make sure, and I have that accommodated in Breeze through modifiers, but it's just staffing-wise, it's very complex, and particularly in the beginning of it, we have to ensure that nobody falls through the cracks.
Right.
And what we've been finding is we have some issues where people are with, for example, needing to also comply not only with the 36 months, but the 24 months in the same program, is some people will need to spend extra time, more than the 36 months, to meet that criteria, which would mean for sure they wouldn't be eligible in the first, and we'd have to put them into the second. And it's just, right now, it's impossible for us to totally comply with SB 806, so this really makes it cleaner for us to comply with it. It brings us in line with what the medical board does, and it makes everybody have to demonstrate at the same time. And I think from a streamlined perspective, staffing-wise, it just makes it, there's no exceptions to the rule. We just start to eliminate a lot of things that we have to make sure we're covering.
Thank you.
So you mentioned if this goes through, it will start to roll out when?
I hope it would be implemented January 1, 2023.
Okay.
And in terms of when the SB 806 went into effect with the new rules, that went into effect January of this year. So the first time that we're going to see any kind of need to demonstrate would be anybody that's licensed after January 1, and so the soonest for somebody between the 12 and the 24 month, or the 13 and the 24 month period would be January, February-ish, would be the first people that would have to demonstrate. And without this change, we'd have to see, are they able to complete the 36 months in time? And if they're not, then we would have to automatically code them so that we renew them for the first time, but stop them from renewing on the second renewal.
So I think the motion, and Michael can correct me here, that I have on here is to approve this proposed 2022 ledge proposal, and upon approval by the board members, board staff will contact the legislature to seek authors for this proposal.
Yes, that's appropriate. That's appropriate motion language.
Excellent. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the changes.
Thank you, Claudia. Any seconds?
I'll second it. This is Andrew.
Excellent. Any additional comments from the board? Do we need to open for public comment prior to our vote?
Yes, we do.
Okay, why don't we open for public comment so that that is active? And any comments from the board? Okay, then let's look at our Q&A and make sure we have any public comments.
Exactly. We've got the public comment feature of WebEx open. We have no comments yet. And I guess formality should require me to check in with each location. Sacramento, any requests for comment?
There are no members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. Toluca Lake, any members of the public want to comment?
No members of the public in Toluca Lake.
Thank you. San Mateo, any requests for public comment?
No requests, no public members
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. Pomona, any requests for public comment?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos, any requests for public comment?
No public members.
Thank you. And no raised hands or questions in WebEx. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator.
You bet.
Having none, can we take a roll call for a vote to pass the proposed motion?
Dr. Jensen.
Approve.
Andrew Marino,
Yes.
Laura Damian,
Aye.
Claudia Mercado,
Yes.
Dr. Patel,
Yes.
Denise Pines.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you so much. Then let's move on to, the motion is carried. Moving on to our last agenda item number 12, future agenda items. Oh,
Dr. Jensen, this is Mark Ito. We have
yes.
to go back to item 11A.
11A.
Oh, pardon me, I forgot we did B first.
Sorry.
Yes,
We're
Ms.
almost
Thorfinson.
there, but not quite. Okay, we have 11 bills, 2 of which there is a staff recommendation for a support. So what I'm proposing is that we discuss the ones that we're proposing for a position, and if you want, having looked at the legislation, want to raise any of the others, please do, but I won't go over the others that are not signaled for a position. So the first one is, I'm going to take them out of order. AB 1733 by Quirk. This is state bodies and open meetings. This is the proposal that you've heard from various speakers that would create a hybrid system of open meetings law that is different from the current open meetings law, that it would allow a mixture of public participation at least one in-person site, and others can be joined remotely. It would also allow teleconference lines, and it is something that I think merges in both the legislatures and advocates' minds and the board's minds, a good mix of how we could compromise to have virtual meetings, increase access, and honor the open meetings laws for participation. The idea for the board in virtual meetings is it would save us significant amount of money. It does increase convenience, but without some of the features in this proposed legislation, there is high risks of meetings having to be canceled. So this is a way that we can kind of get the best of both worlds. And boards are being asked to take a position on this because it would be something our board would really, really benefit from.
Hi, this is Mark Ito. I also want to chime in that there, from a fiscal impact standpoint, there would be some cost savings associated with this bill in that we wouldn't have to, not having to have an in-person meeting every single time would create a cost savings for hotels, travel, and other things as well.
And I would add, in terms of public access, prior to the pandemic and allowing for teleconference calls, this board didn't allow teleconference calls. So that's one thing that would be included in the new hybrid feature, and it's through both the WebEx and the teleconference call that we've seen much more public participation. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Ito. And Ms. Thorfinson, I would completely agree, as we heard earlier in this meeting from a member of the public, that it was improved access and they appreciated that. Would anyone like to make a motion to support this bill?
I motion to support.
Just
Excellent.
wanted to make a final
I'll
statement.
second it.
But yeah,
What?
go ahead, let's move on.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I support it, I think from an environmental aspect too, just to get us off the road and off planes. So that was just my final comment. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Where are we on motion?
I believe Ms. Pines made a motion and we had a second. I wasn't totally sure, for Mr. Adamian.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's okay.
Shall we do a roll call for vote?
We do need public comment on the motion.
Oh, pardon me. Let's open up our Q&A for any public comment.
Thank you. This is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A in case anyone in the attendees list wants to comment. And while we're doing that, we can also check in with the public locations in Sacramento. Do you have any members of the public who would like to make a comment?
No members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. Toluca Lake?
No.
Thank you. San Mateo?
No.
Thank you. Pomona?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos?
No.
Thank you. We do have one request for public comment from someone logged in as Michelle Montserrat Ramos. Michelle, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning. And you're unmuted. Are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I'm with Consumer Watchdog. Fully support AB 1733. The teleconferencing option is incredibly important. I was actually the person that really pushed the Mega Board of California to create their teleconferencing. And it really increased consumer engagement with the board, which is incredibly important. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for your comments.
And there are
Ms. Moderator, no additional?
No additional requests.
Excellent. Then why don't we run through a roll call for vote? Machiko.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, not at all.
Dr. Jensen,
Yes.
Andrew Marino,
Yes.
Gloria Damian,
Yes.
Claudia Mercado,
Yes.
Dr. Patel,
Yes.
Denise Pines.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Motion is carried to weigh in to support this bill, and I believe Ms. Thorfinson had a second bill to present to us.
I did. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. The last bill that we are going to take a position on is AB 1604, which is the Upward Mobility Act of 2022. The bill would establish, among other things, a policy of the state that the composition of state boards and commissions be broadly reflective of the general public. Removing reference to ethnic minorities or women from this policy doesn't exclude them from removing that language, just changes the language. And generally what it does is try to have boards and bureaus and commissions reflect the public, including underrepresented members from underrepresented communities. other kinds of organizations have this kind of representation, and I think this bill is trying to bring that kind of representation to this as a requirement for board appointments. So we thought that the board may like this bill and consider supporting it.
Can you clarify something? So we're getting rid of the language saying women and minorities?
Yes. You're wondering why?
What was that?
Is that being substituted with other language that you're aware of, or is that just being?
The other language would be reflective of the communities as opposed to calling out minorities and ethnicities and gender in specific.
Is that because, for example, in California, Hispanics are no longer the minority, they're actually the majority?
I think that there's a nuance on gender distinctions, you know, increasing changes in gender labels and categories. And I think that also they are, in this language, further defining different aspects of race and ethnicity and origin. And they also are, there is a recent lawsuit that struck down in terms of constitutionality wording that might have been triggered if ethnic minorities and women were included in that. So I think that may be some of the driving force behind the change in the language. The bills, so it looks like it's taking away, but I think it's still, it's trying to make a legally defensible push for diversity among commissions and boards overall.
And who's sponsoring this bill?
Holden.
Holden? Who's, any background on? I'm not sure who that is.
I don't have background right. Oh, do I have it in my little? Yeah.
Do you know if the Medical Board of California is taking a position on this specific bill?
I don't. And this bill we brought before you, I would say the open meeting bill, the 1733, was sort of a slam dunk for likability. This one we're proposing, if the board doesn't feel like they like the language, particularly the approach to removing the language, the recommendation for support is not necessarily a strong one. So if the board's wishes are not to take a position, that would be fine too.
Any discussion from the board? It sounds as though the general concept and idea behind this was to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice, and making sure that people were not isolated and called out. However, it sounds as though that is not necessarily reflective of the language that's being used, and some of the board members have questions. Is there any way that we can watch this and address it at the next meeting? Or do any other board members have any particular recommendations or feelings on this?
I don't know if I agree with the language removal. I mean,
yeah,
I feel like generic language is what gets us to not having inclusivity. And so when you have to actually spell it out, you know, it brings attention to an examination of what it is you're actually, in fact, doing. So to
Someone can go out because the obstacle has a bottle that you can.
Understood. That's why I'm not sure when this is pending for legislation, when it is coming up, but is there any way that we could look into this a little bit more, maybe touch base with some of our kind of sibling boards, including Medical Board of California, and maybe even get a little more information, as Ms. Mercado was asking, who is sponsoring this and what was the nature behind it? Would that be possible, Mr. Ito and Ms. Thorfinson?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I can gather more information on all those topics, and then we have our next meeting in August. But we can always, if the information lines up, we can always have a teleconference meeting before then if you want to take a position on it.
I think that would be excellent because as Ms. Pines was stating, and I know most of us would all express, I believe, that we want the inclusivity and we want the equality, but we're not sure if this is quite it. The idea behind it is there, but we're not sure if we want to support this being done in this way or if there might be a better way. So I think a little more information would be useful to us.
And this is Claudia.
I agree with that.
Yeah. This is Claudia. I pulled up the bill and something just grabbed my attention. For example, there's some language that says the bill would distinguish between African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States and African Americans who are not descendants of persons enslaved in the United States as defined. So I think we really need to look at this language. That was the first thing I read, and I'm not sure how you can even.
Yeah. No, clearly more.
And it's I don't know. I would be offended, but this is
It
first
sounds
reaction.
like we definitely need to look into it more. Should we take any comments from the public at this time? Knowing that we are going to put this on our next meeting agenda and not make any recommendations at this time.
Since there's no action being taken, we don't need to take public comment on this specifically, but when we move on from the legislation report, we should take public comment on it as a whole.
Excellent. Excellent. We're going to table this and get more information. Are there any other bills for legislation that you wanted to bring up, Ms. Thorfinson?
No, those were the two that we singled out for actual consideration for positions. The rest, all of the bills we always monitor, but the rest, unless the board members have a strong feeling about any of the others on the list that we have not discussed, I would not make any more recommendations or go over any further bills for this agenda item.
Excellent. Excellent. Any additional board members? Did anything else you feel need to be addressed or brought up on any of the other bills, or not at this time? If I hear silence, then I'll say let's go to public comment as we are about to move on from our legislation piece. Madam Moderator, could you see if we have any requests for public comment regarding legislation?
Absolutely. We've opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. And if you are an in-person attendee in a physical location, you can raise your hand and I will step quickly through the locations. Is Sacramento, do you have any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
No members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. Toluca Lake?
No.
Thank you. San Mateo?
No.
Thank you. Pomona?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos?
No.
Thank you. And there are no raised hands and no questions in the queue from WebEx attendees. Shall I close that Q&A?
Yes, please, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
And that would take us to our next item. Am I correct? One of our very last items here. Item number 12, future meeting and agenda items. Mr. Ito, did you have something on this?
No, this agenda item is typically for board members to chime in if we want any items on future agendas.
Well, we've just tabled this particular one. Does anyone else have any particular issues they'd like to see on additional agendas? Hearing no comment, I would ask if we can open up to the public to see if there are any additional agenda items that any members of the public would like to have on future meeting dates.
Certainly. And this is an opportunity for anyone on WebEx to contribute if you have any future agenda items. We have opened up the Q&A panel, look for the question mark icon, and then in the text box, click comment and send. And I will again run through the public locations just as a formality. In Sacramento, do you have any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
No members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. Toluca Lake?
No.
Thank you. San Mateo?
No.
Thank you. Pomona?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos?
No.
Thank you. And we have no questions in WebEx, either raised hands or questions. As a time saver, we can leave it open as you move on to the next agenda item if you'd like.
That would be excellent. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Next agenda item number 13, future meeting dates. I believe we already have at least one out, and I will defer this to Ms. Chong or Mr. Ito.
Hi, this is Mark Ito. Yeah, we have two dates currently scheduled. It's August 18th of 2022 and December 8th of 2022. We have them both down as teleconference at this point. With the uncertainty of AB 1733 allowing us to do completely teleconference without disclosing locations. This is something we should probably talk about if you want to do it today or maybe offline, whether we want to do those in person or if we want to continue to do them teleconference with AB 1733 kind of looming.
This is Claudia. I really like today's setup that I was able to come in and spend some time with the staff and with my peers. So if we can maybe keep this open for the public here in Sacramento, or at least to allow us to build camaraderie between the staff and the board members.
I agree. I came in at a time where COVID had just started, and so I haven't met anybody. And so it would be great to meet the rest of the board in person. And I just wanted to thank Western University for graciously allowing me to participate in the meeting. We have a wonderful setup here, IT, and this would be a great location to hold a potential meeting in the future. It would also help engage our future generations of DOs as they become as they enter their professional lives. So it would be a good opportunity to kind of help spread awareness in more of in kind of an academic setting. But I would agree that in-person meetings would be great too. Thanks.
I think we were last there about 6 years ago, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. Any additional comments? Do we want to aim for a hybrid model, allowing in-person as well as some ability to call in, as we were noting that helped increase public comment and participation?
I like the idea of having both options, either coming in if it works or being in a remote location. I think both options provide flexibility for members.
I agree. I like the hybrid option as well.
Excellent. And then I would entertain any comments from the public.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone has any comment about future meeting dates, you can use the WebEx Q&A feature, and I will quickly run through the physical locations one more time. In Sacramento, do you have any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
There are no members of the public in Sacramento.
Thank you. Toluca Lake?
No.
Thank you. San Mateo?
No.
Thank you. Pomona?
No.
Thank you. Cerritos?
No.
Thank you. We do have one person on WebEx who would like to make a comment. Someone logged in as Michelle Montserrat Ramos. And Michelle, I will give you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And you're unmuted.
Good afternoon. Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm a consumer watchdog. I would really appreciate the hybrid option with the ability of the public to continue to participate via virtual meetings. The public, as you know, it makes it very difficult at times to travel to Sacramento for these meetings, and it allows the public to work and still be able to engage in your meetings, which is really important for them. And I think their input is really important for you to hear as well. And also as an aside, because I didn't get a chance to chime in the last agenda item, I just want to thank Dr. Jensen for proposing an enforcement process agenda item for a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Ramos. Yes, I apologize. I did not bring that up again. We discussed it during its topic at the beginning. I forget. Agenda item 1, I believe. Any
And there are-
additional comments? Yep. Go ahead.
No, there are no additional comments from WebEx users.
Then I would ask Mr. Ito, does that give us enough information saying that we would like to keep it as a hybrid model?
Yeah,
Or
my
do we need more
understanding is, even if we did a complete in-person with board members, we could still have the WebEx option for the public as well.
Excellent. Well then, unless anyone, from what I heard, it sounded as though definitely having the option for in-person so that we could get together and see each other, but also the possibility of being able to call in as a hybrid was what I heard from the board overall. So I think that is what we are hoping for to continue right now. And we have 2 dates out. Do we need to propose a third, beginning of 2023 date at this time, or are we comfortable with doing that in our August meeting?
Let's do it in the August meeting. Also.
I would agree. Just wanted to make sure everybody on the same page. Any additional comments from the board? If not, I believe we move on to agenda item number 14, adjournment.
Good job, everybody.
Thanks,
Nobody's gonna
everybody.
stop me. Okay, the time is 5:09. The meeting is adjourned.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Good work,
Thank you, Ms.
everyone.
Fisher, too.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Bye.
Moderator, you were great. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.